I will do my best to keep this to as few words as possible. I have a small group of people I consider my best friends that I have known all my life. I'll use fake names for them: Beth, Stack, and Gwen. Of the three, only Gwen is married and in a relationship. I'm a big girl, 16-year-old and 260 pounds. I've always had issues with my weight and had self-esteem issues. I was always told, "You have such a beautiful face, and if you were smaller, I would date you." I've been in a few relationships where it was obvious that my boyfriends at the time were ashamed to be seen with me. They would never hold my hand in public and never posted pictures of us together on Instagram and Facebook. My luck on dating apps consisted of getting ghosted or just wanting intimacy. And I'm embarrassed to say that I allowed myself to be used by some guys. Eventually, I stopped responding to most messages. 3 years ago, I met my fiance, Kyle, at one of my nephew's soccer games. Kyle was the coach and approached me afterwards. He asked me if I was ever going to reply to his message. I was confused, and he said he messaged me a week prior and answered a question I had on my POF profile. That's when I remembered his message, and I got embarrassed. I told him that I had been busy, and he asked me if I had any plans for later that night. My sister and nephew both liked him and had told me as much. I agreed and exchanged numbers with him, even though I felt like he was out of my league. Kyle is average-sized and in shape. To this day, I don't know why he didn't walk out on me on that date. I got it into my head that he was only after intimacy and might have some big girl fetish. We met up for an early dinner at a casual Mexican restaurant. And within 5 minutes, I asked him, "Are you just looking for a hookup because you have a thing for fat girls?" He shook his head and told me he was interested because of things I listed on my profile, like how I liked soccer, my favorite wine, TV shows, and that my photos I posted showed that I liked to travel. He led most of the conversation and tried to get me to open up and ask questions. He would gently touch my hand from time to time and tried flirting. Somehow he asked to see me again, and the second date went a lot better. I found out he was a widower that lost his wife and 2-month-old son in a car crash a decade before. He had tried dating off and on for a few years, but nothing serious came of it. He worked in the field I got my degree in, but had no luck getting hired into. Within 3 months, we were officially boyfriend and girlfriend. My friends and family were thrilled, and his family welcomed me in. Even his former in-laws, who he still considered family. All except Beth. Beth, when I told her, kept asking me if I was sure about him. She asked if he wasn't just using me for intimacy, which had yet to happen. Then it was, well, he probably doesn't want to have intimacy with you. When I mentioned that he holds my hand in public and would pull me just a bit closer to him when we would go out for drinks and guys would walk towards us, suddenly he was controlling. Eventually, Kyle met my 3 best friends, and they all liked him immediately. And Beth said he was a keeper. He helped me get hired at another company in my field, starting at $70,000 plus benefits, after I politely declined an opportunity to work alongside him. I say all this because since Kyle has come into my life, he has shown me nothing but love, affection, grace, and kindness. He has also helped me start to get past my insecurities. I was over 300 pounds when I met him, and now I'm at 260. My initial fears of being some fetish of his are gone, and he has been there in every way I could ever want. A few days ago, we hosted a dinner with Beth, Stack, Gwen, and her husband. Kyle and Gwen's husband, Mike, had become friends, and they did all the cooking and cleanup. Everything was going good, and we were all relaxing on the back porch, drinking some cocktails, when Beth asked me in front of everyone, "Why do you tolerate that picture of Kyle with his dead wife and son?" I was absolutely mortified. Kyle looked upset, but was keeping his composure. I explained that it was the only picture he had of the 3 of them together, and that I would never ask him to hide it, because that was his wife and son. That he loved them, and that I know Kyle loves me, and that she was being rude and needed to call an Uber to leave. She obviously had too much to drink and didn't seem like she wanted to leave. Then, she absolutely embarrassed me when she brought up a humiliation I had endured with an ex during the lowest point in my life that I hadn't told Kyle about. I bet keeping the picture up was his idea and you went along with it. Like when Jeff would make you wear a pig mask and oink while he fricked you. Kyle absolutely exploded on her and yelled that she Get the frick out of our house. Mike and Gwen had to drag a now-crying Beth out with Stack following them. When they left, I just started bawling and looked at Kyle and started to repeat that I was sorry, and if he didn't want me anymore, that I understood. All my insecurities that I worked so hard to overcome came flooding back. He just hugged me and kissed the top of my head and told me what I did before. It doesn't bother him. It was Beth humiliating me that pissed him off. He told me that it's up to me if I remain friends with her, but he doesn't want to be around Beth anymore. He cleaned up the patio and held me as I fell asleep crying. Today I texted Beth that we needed to talk. We met up for brunch and she was very embarrassed about her behavior, but I told her I don't think I can be her friend. She then started to blame Kyle for our friendship ending, and that he was fucked in the head for making you look at his dead wife and kid. Don't throw away our friendship over him. I got up and paid for my food and left. Gwen and Stace don't want to be in the middle, but agree that Beth was in the wrong and that they are happy that I found the love of my life and hope one day things will return to normal. I told them that I won't be upset if they hang out with Beth, but I don't want to be included if she is with them. They were fine with that. Beth was my first friend and someone I always looked up to. She held me as I cried when my first boyfriend left me a week after I lost my virginity to him because he was dared to date me and sleep with me. Now I'm wavering about wanting to give her another chance. We have so much history and amazing memories. Kyle said he would support me either way, but he was a hard no on being around Beth outside our wedding if I wanted her there. I'm so torn on what to do because she was drunk, but still she said those words and they cut me to the core. Should I forgive her or cut her out of my life? TLDR, I'm a big girl in a relationship with a fit guy. One of my best friends brought up my fiance's dead wife and son in a rude way, and brought up an intimacy act I performed with an ex when I was 20 in front of other friends and fiance after a dinner. She was drunk and I don't know if I should forgive her. Minor update, I just got a text from Gwen who told me that she and Mike have cut Beth out of their lives. Mike was furious at Beth and got pissed at Gwen for wanting to keep a friend like that. Gwen apologized for even considering keeping Beth as a friend. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I would not have someone like Beth in my life. She revealed something so private and personal to hurt you. It sounds like she is jealous. In many ways, she sounds like the men who used you. She may have liked being the thinner friend. Now you have met a good man while she is single, and she can't stand it. She wants you to herself. She is filled with the jealousy to the point she is hurting you deeply, and that is not okay. If you were to consider having her back in your life, she needs to get therapy and publicly apologize for being a raging jerk to everyone at the party. She needs to explain herself and why she was so cruel. Until she gets her act together, I would steer clear of her. Comment 2. Beth is jealous as frick that you are in a loving relationship and getting married. She 100% thinks badly of you, thinks she's better, and wondering why it's happening to you and not her. She is constantly trying to sabotage your relationship by getting in your head with her nonsense questions and opinions. When that didn't work, she attacked your fiancé directly using the one thing that might push him away. And when that failed, she humiliated you by exposing something terrible to get him to leave you. She is no friend. Drop her and be happy with your remaining friends and fiancé. Now for the update. Thank you for sticking around for more updates. A lot has happened since the last post. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife when I met up with Beth for brunch. She tried to apologize, but her words felt hollow. I could see the regret in her eyes, but it didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I left the restaurant with a heavy heart, knowing that our friendship was hanging by a thread. Back home, Kyle was my rock. He didn't push me to make any decisions about Beth, but I could tell he was relieved when I said I needed space from her. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, but it also felt like I was losing a part of my past. Meanwhile, work was a welcome distraction. I was putting in extra hours, determined to prove myself in the new job Kyle had helped me land. My boss, who had taken a chance on me, was impressed with my dedication. It felt good to be valued for my skills and not judged for my appearance. But just when I thought things were settling down, Gwen dropped a surprise. She and Mike had been trying for a baby for years, and she was finally pregnant. The news was bittersweet. I was overjoyed for her, but it also reminded me of the family Kyle had lost. He was happy for Gwen too, but I caught him staring at the picture of his late wife and son more often. Then, out of the blue, Kyle's former in-laws invited us over for dinner. They had always been kind to me, but I knew it was hard for them to see Kyle moving on. The evening was going well until Kyle's former mother-in-law pulled me aside. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that she was worried Kyle was trying to replace her daughter with me. Her words stung, and I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she was right. The next day, Kyle sat me down for a serious talk. He had been offered a job in another state, a fresh start, away from the memories that haunted him. He wanted me to go with him, but he understood if I couldn't leave my life behind. It was a decision that would change everything. I thought about Beth and our fractured friendship, my new job, and the life I had built here. But I also thought about Kyle and the love we shared. It was a chance to support him the way he had always supported me. After a sleepless night, I made my choice. I told Kyle I would go with him. It was a leap of faith, but I was ready to start a new chapter with the man I loved. As for Beth, I sent her one last message. I told her I forgave her, but I couldn't forget what she had done. I wished her well, but I knew it was time for me to move on. Gwen and Stack were supportive, promising to visit us in our new home. It was a bittersweet farewell, but I was hopeful for the future. So, here we are, packing up our lives and preparing for the journey ahead. It's scary and exciting, but I'm ready for whatever comes our way. Thank you for reading. My mother criticizes us for taking in my paralyzed sister-in-law. But when she sees us transform her life, she's forced to eat her words. My husband's little sister is paralyzed from the neck down after a car accident when she was 14. My husband was 17 years old at the time and the driver. He feels responsible even though my sister-in-law has never blamed him. My mother-in-law, at 64 years old, is essentially her full-time caretaker. My husband is a nurse, and a friend of his from work helps my sister-in-law and mother-in-law at a discounted rate. Recently, my husband's friend had to take a leave of absence, so my husband and I have been helping. This includes helping his sister bathe and dress. This is important for later. Seeing how caring, gentle, and compassionate my husband is just reinforces why I fell in love with him. My mother-in-law, as she gets older, has unfortunately declined physically and often vents about having to care for her daughter, but never where she can hear. My husband and I have talked about having his sister move in with us. We have the room. The house is already compliant with her needs, and we aren't having children. My husband would quit his job to be her full-time caretaker, and I would keep working. Financially, this is very doable for us, even without my husband's income, as I make more than enough. I am 1000% on board with this. I was telling my mother about what my husband and I discussed, and she told me she thinks it's inappropriate for my husband to be dressing his sister, helping her bathe, and other things dealing with bodily functions. My mother's coldness shocked me when she said my mother-in-law should suck it up, pay money for a full-time caretaker, or put her in an assisted living facility. My husband's friend was brought up, but she can't do it full-time, and my husband doesn't want to entrust his sister's care to someone he doesn't know. Now my mother's constantly on my case that I shouldn't let my husband quit his job to care for his sister. Nothing I have said, like, this is what my husband does for a living, it's not intimacy. And honestly, I can't believe I had to explain why to my mom, and that it would help my mother-in-law tremendously. How can I get through to my mother because this is looking like the route we will take? I don't need her permission, but I'd love to have her support. Any ideas on how to get my mother on board? Edit. A few people have brought up what my sister-in-law wants, and if she can communicate. My sister-in-law has all of her mental faculties. Mother-in-law and sister are adults and do have disagreements. My sister-in-law has asked us if we would take her in if something happens to my mother-in-law. I should have added that in my original post. She has also said that my husband is a lot more patient and would prefer him over her mother, but that she doesn't want to hurt her mother by saying that to her. I feel pretty confident that when we ask her if she would like my husband to take over and live with us, then she would say yes. We are in the same town, and my sister-in-law and mother-in-law would still see each other. Moving her in would make caring for her easier because of the layout of the house, and the bathrooms were custom built to accommodate her needs when we had our house built. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You're going to have to establish some boundaries with your mother, because if she says what her opinion is in front of your husband or his sister, it will hurt them more than what they've already been through. Maybe your mother has been through something in the past, but that doesn't give her the right to take it out on your family. I would go low contact and tell her she is not allowed in your house until she is able to respect your decision and stop making comments. Comment 2. I'd suggest telling your mother that the price of admission for her to be in your life is going to be that she keeps her thoughts on the topic to herself. And if she won't, I'd go no contact. If you don't want to do that, then at least shut her down every single time for the sake of your husband. If your mother can't understand how nursing care works, then I don't know what to tell you. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around for this update. Well, things took a turn and not for the better. My husband's friend, the one who was helping out with his sister, decided to move across the country. No warning, just up and left. It was a job offer, apparently too good to refuse. Everyone's reeling from it, especially my mother-in-law, who's now left with no help and a heart full of betrayal. In the midst of this chaos, my mother hasn't let up. She's been hounding me about the decision to have my sister-in-law move in with us. She even had the nerve to suggest that my husband's affection for his sister was unnatural. I couldn't believe it. My husband, bless him, just shrugged it off. He's too kind, always letting things slide, even when they shouldn't. It's like he's got a sign on his back that says, "Walk all over me." I'm fuming, but he just carries on, doing what needs to be done. Then, as if we needed more on our plate, my mother-in-law slipped while helping my sister-in-law. Nothing broken, thank goodness. But she's been ordered to rest, doctor's orders. So guess who's been picking up the slack? That's right, my husband and I. We're running on fumes here, but what choice do we have? It's not all bad, though. My sister-in-law, she's a trooper. She told us she wants to move in with us. Said it's time and that she doesn't want to be a burden to her mom anymore. That's something, right? It's a relief knowing she's on board, but it's also a whole new level of commitment. Now here's where it gets messy. My husband decided to confront my mother about her comments. It was a showdown, years of pent-up frustration spilling out. He told her off, said, "We're doing this with or without her blessing." It was a side of him I'd never seen, and honestly, it was a bit scary. But it changed something between us, like a shift in the air. He's been different since, more assertive. It's like he's finally standing up for himself, for us. We've started the preparations for my sister-in-law's move. It's a lot converting the guest room, setting up all the medical equipment. But we're getting there, bit by bit. My mother-in-law's been quiet, probably still shaken from her fall and the loss of her helper. She's been watching us, though, seeing how we handle everything. I think she's starting to realize that this might be for the best. As for my mother, she's backed off a bit since the confrontation. I don't know if it's shame or just plain shock, but she's not been as vocal. It's a small mercy, but I'll take it. We've got enough to deal with without her adding to the pile, so that's where we're at. It's been a month of ups and downs, of changes and challenges. But we're pushing through, doing what we believe is right. It's not easy, but then the important things rarely are. Thanks for reading. My husband's anger issues escalate after our son is born, and he screams at our baby. So I take the kid and make sure he loses custody forever. I, 36-year-old female, have been with my husband for 16 years, married for 6 of those years. He has always had anger issues since we began dating, but he has been working on himself without the help of therapy, and he has definitely improved a lot since then. He used to scream and punch walls to the point he would leave a hole in the wall or just break things. He no longer breaks things or punches holes in walls, but he sometimes still cannot process his anger and frustrations at times, and just does a blood-curdling scream. Other things he used to do is drive overly aggressively on the roads. Whenever someone cuts him off on the road or tailgates him, he would then speed, cross solid lines on the road to catch up to the individual if they were speeding off to cut them off as well. I know it's extremely stupid of him. I've yelled and screamed at him many times over this as I was in the passenger seat. I would afterwards tell him calmly I didn't feel safe and ask him what was the point of doing all that, because at the end of the day, the other driver doesn't care that they cut him off and he just put our lives in danger over some idiot. He always has a stone-cold face and bluntly says, "Sorry, I won't do it again" afterwards. Over the years, he got better with the aggressive driving. Then we got pregnant. I told him he can't drive aggressively anymore. No more accidental slips of anger on the road. I was more patient back then, but now with our son, I will not tolerate it. This leads to the 2 anger incidents that have happened since our 3-month-old was born. 1, husband was driving. I was in the back seat with our son. Someone was speeding up from behind us. Road was 1 lane both directions. Car crosses the solid line to cut us off. Husband then speeds up way above the speed limit. I knew what was about to happen and told him, "Don't you dare drive aggressively with our son and I in the car." He still does. I'm yelling at him. He cuts off the other vehicle, brake checks the other car, and hard stops in front of the car in the middle of an intersection. Then my husband speeds off. 2, my son was crying inconsolably tonight. I was busy pumping breast milk. My husband was tending to our son. Our son managed to fall asleep, but then he wakes up and cries again. Husband cannot calm down our son. Husband sighs and does his blood-curdling scream. I run downstairs and demand my husband to hand over our son and for him to go take a walk to calm down. Husband says no. I demand him to hand over the child again. Husband replies with, "Why? You don't trust me with him? I'm not going to hurt him." My husband apologized for screaming while holding our son, said it won't happen again and that he just slipped. I'm frustrated and I don't know how to deal with this anymore. I've told him he needs to go see a therapist about his anger issues. He says no. He has always had issues with talking about his emotions and doesn't feel comfortable talking to a stranger about his issues. I know his anger stems from how his mother treated and still treats him. His mother acts out in an explosive manner as well when she's angry. So I'm positive he just picked up on this from his mom. I don't want our son exposed to this sort of behavior and think it's okay or have his life in danger if my husband drives like a lunatic again. How many times can he apologize? How many more times can he slip until something bad happens? I told him that I don't expect him to never be angry. We're all human, we are allowed to be angry. But he needs to process his anger in a healthy way. Aside from the anger, my husband is a sweet man. He really does take care of me and our son. 99.9% of the time, we are a happy, loving couple with no issues. Then that 0.01% is his anger fits. But this anger is just a whole different beast that I don't know how to deal with anymore. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I just feel like my only options now are A, demand. He goes to therapy ASAP and work on his anger issues. B, if he says no, I have to leave him and try to take full custody of our son. I can try to stop my husband's anger fits when we're together. But if we are separated, there's no way for me to monitor how he is around our son. I just feel bad because my husband made so much progress with his anger issues, but the fact that he already snapped twice since our son was born 3 months ago. I fear it's going to happen again, and I swear if my son gets ended the life of in a car accident, I don't know if I will ever be the same again. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. A woman I grew up with. Her son-in-law lost his temper briefly and shook his son. That baby died. How much do you have to shake a baby for it to die, or for a brain injury? A couple of seconds? A minute? Also, I had a workmate who lost her young daughter in a car crash. I vividly recall her sobbing. There's a really good chance you're going to have those experiences with him. If you leave him, there's always supervised supervision, surely. Or at the very least, he's likely to be around your baby less. Would you rather be on edge 24/7? Or drive your son to McDonald's and sit there for an hour or two several times a week while they play together? Comment 2. 3 months old. As a father, I can tell you that the reasons for him to snap at your son will only increase. This is a very dangerous life you are living with him. I have to wonder why you went with him in the first place, knowing his temper. Therapy is obviously mandatory for him to follow. And since the life of your kid depends on it, it should be a clear ultimatum. The progress he made seems to hold on thin ice. As your son grows up and the new difficulties that will come with it, you will have to put your foot down and really prepare for a divorce. Don't wait for it to be too late. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So things have escalated since I last vented about my husband's anger issues. Remember how I said he was getting better? Well, I might have spoken too soon. It's like he's been bottling it all up, and it's starting to seep out in ways I never expected. A few weeks ago, we were at a family gathering. His mom, the queen of tantrums, started criticizing everything from how we were raising our son to my husband's job. I could see the muscles in his jaw clenching. I tried to diffuse the situation, but before I knew it, my husband was yelling back at her, and the whole room went silent. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. I grabbed our son and left the room, but the damage was done. Everyone saw that side of him, the side I've been trying to shield our son from. Then, just when I thought we could move past that, my husband lost his job. He didn't tell me right away, just pretended to go to work for a week. When I found out, I was more hurt by the lie than the job loss. It's like he's regressing and I'm scared of what comes next. But here's the real kicker. Last week, he was supposed to pick up our son from daycare. I got a call from the center saying he never showed. Panic doesn't even begin to describe what I felt. I left work immediately, and on the way, I saw our car on the side of the road. My husband was there, arguing with the police officer. He'd gotten into a road rage incident, and it had escalated to the point where the cops were called. Our son was still at daycare, thank God, but that was the last straw for me. I told him we needed a serious change. I gave him an ultimatum. Therapy, or I'm taking our son and leaving. He looked at me like I'd slapped him, but he agreed to therapy. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were on the right track. But life has a cruel way of proving you wrong. Just when therapy seemed to be helping, my husband's old buddy from high school showed up out of the blue. This guy is bad news, always was. He's the type who thinks rules don't apply to him, and he brings out the worst in my husband. They went out for a couple of drinks, and I got a call at 2 a.m. from the local jail. My husband had been arrested for getting into a fight at the bar. His friend had bailed, leaving him to take the fall. I was furious, not just at him, but at myself for believing things could change. I had to bail him out, and the look of shame on his face was something I'll never forget. But shame doesn't change the fact that our son could have been in the car with him, or that next time, he might not walk away from a fight. So I did what I had to do. I packed our bags, took our son, and left. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I couldn't risk our son's safety anymore. My husband's been calling, begging for another chance, saying he's lost without us. But I've heard it all before. I've started the process for full custody, and it's like a war now. I never wanted this, but I have to protect our son. I'm staying with my sister for now, and she's been my rock. She's seen the whole saga unfold and keeps reminding me I'm doing the right thing. It's just, I never thought my life would turn out like this. I always believed people could change, but maybe some things are just too deeply rooted. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.